Inside Spurs is brought to you by our partners talkSPORT Bet. Head over to the website now to sign up for your exclusive new offer where you get £40 in free bets when you bet £10. Head over to talksportbet.com/Inside Spurs now.
When I saw this, I just froze. Because it just wasn't something I was expecting to see today. It was an utter
You know in the WhatsApp
shock.
groups when someone sends you something and then there's the silly noise in the background. We all know the noise, yeah, that ruins your day at work. I thought I was going to open it and get one of them, but it wasn't. It was real. Hello and welcome to Inside Spurs, talkSPORT's very own Spurs dedicated show, brought to you by our friends at talkSPORT Bet. It's me, Majestic, joined here once again by the one and only Sonny Snelling from Sonny Talks Spurs. We are recording on Tuesday evening, the 4th of September, the day that Daniel Levy steps away from his beloved Tottenham Hotspur. I've just got to start there and go straight to you, Sonny. How are you feeling?
I'm absolutely shocked. I mean, this sort of came like a bolt out of the blue. We're all sitting there casually, and I keep my I have the notifications on Twitter for Tottenham Hotspur just in case something happens. But when I saw this, I just froze. Because it just wasn't something I was expecting to see today. It was an utter
You know in the WhatsApp
shock.
groups when someone sends you something and then there's the silly noise in the background. We all know the noise, yeah, that ruins your day at work. I thought I was going to open it and get one of them, but it wasn't. It was real.
It was just unbelievable. And I just feel like there's a lot of mixed reaction from like a lot of people at the moment saying be careful what you wish for. But I'd say as Spurs fans unanimously, I think we're all very relieved. We all have wanted this to happen for a long, long time. And it's quite ironic because I think we mentioned it on one of the last shows we did, about less than a month ago, Daniel Levy sat down with Gary Neville on the overlap and did a little interview, and he said a famous quote which will probably live long in the memory of, "They will be grateful, the Spurs fans, when I leave." But at the moment, I think we've got the flags out, got the banners out. We're celebrating at the moment. We've both got our badges out again.
But with that being said, it almost feels like he was hinting something in that interview, and that interview was almost maybe just to show, here's what I built, don't forget.
Yeah, it was quite an interesting read, the statement. It's like, you know, sometimes when Spurs put out these statements, it is quite a lot of fluff. But this one, I mean, they've already got someone in a lesser role, a non-executive chairman, whatever that means in this modern business world.
Do you know what that strikes me, Sonny? That strikes me to say someone that doesn't have, you know, all the power. Non-executive, you know, where everyone's going to have their say.
It's almost like I was the chairman, I'm the only chairman, remember, like, long live the king sort of thing. And I think the really interesting point from it is, one, in this statement, there's not one, like, not apology, but it was all quite positive, and I thought you'd think there'd be like a, you know, I know there were some moments where, and we'll probably go on to some of his, you know, highs and lows later on as we're chatting, but I think the very key part is the final sentence, which is Enoch/Joe Lewis are still the owners at present. And also what we've got to remember is Levy has got a nice chunk of shares in Tottenham, so he definitely hasn't fully removed himself. Like, he's still going to be involved in a capacity of he's going to profit from us, but he's not going to be. It's just I'd love to have seen him making this decision, because even this summer there was conversations that he was going to take a step back from transfers, but he was all over it like a, you know, like a dog on a summer's day sort of thing. It was just, you know, as we've seen from
the Amazon documentary, he's fully involved in all of those angles. He was.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where I sit there and go, it must have taken a lot for him to do it. Even you'd think, like, after what happened maybe last year, you know, it was two monumental things. We had our worst Premier League season, and then we won the Europa League. So, you know, some people after that would want to stay because it's a positive, or maybe, you know, what he's done is like, he'll frame it as a positive, like, I've left on a high, whereas we all know, like, even this summer, the way that I said it on my own reaction video on my channel, you know, he's still, this summer, we had the Morgan Gibbs-White situation, we had the Eberici Eze situation, you know, he went out knowing what he was doing in regard to, you know, ballsing up some transfer dealings, but it goes to show that maybe, you know, he has done some good things. I will say that he has done some good things. You've got to think of the stadium that we have. That, you know, I was at the Bournemouth game. It is state of the art. I've been to the training ground. It is phenomenal. But I just remember the bad things. I remember sacking Jose Mourinho in the lead up to a League Cup final. I remember not spending for a calendar year when we needed to, back Pochettino, back the team with Kane, Son and Dele Alli. It is more almost like you can't praise him without, it's one step forward and two steps back. You have to sit there and go, what could have been maybe? He could have, amplified us, but he just never did.
Imagine, Sonny's left this summer. Now Daniel Levy. But Ben Davies is still there. It's like it should be like a Hollywood blockbuster. Ben Davies, like the disaster movie. Like, he never leaves. It's like one man remains. Ben Davies.
He's like a cockroach, isn't he? He's a cockroach after the
absolute legend, Benny Davies. But listen, right? Just let's sum up his tenure at Tottenham Hotspur then for you, Sonny. If you look at it in terms of successes, the successes are.
I'd say
business.
At the end of the day, when I went to Spurs with my dad at the weekend, and we were talking about the current state of the club and the transfer window, and my dad always brings up what it was like under Alan Sugar and the ownership before that, whose name has escaped me, but it was, and that was a lot worse. And what Levy did, and what you can applaud him for, was in an age of where we've had Manchester City and Chelsea, where there've been huge cash injections, Newcastle now as well. He's done it such in a traditional way, and a sort of he's done it by the book. We've always been healthy PSR wise and FFP wise in the last couple of years. He has done it in a way where now, the way that he's made that stadium into an NFL, arena, a concert venue. We're so good when it comes to our revenue streams. We're now the second highest match day earners behind Manchester United. So there are really positive things where you look at. He has put us to a level. People laugh that how are Tottenham in the Big Six? They've not won anything and all that, but it was because of the finances, and the way he did it was. By building us gradually, because you got to think of. I mean, I'm only 28, so I don't remember Tottenham in the 90s. But from what I've heard, it was quite scarce, and going into the noughties as well when Levy was coming in. Obviously he was there for 25 years. It was sort of he was building us gradually, and the
majority of your life, Sonny.
Exactly, and you got to think the turning point for me was probably when we first qualified for the Champions League in 2010, 2011. And, remember that all the players, David Bentley, who's going to be on the show in a couple of weeks, dousing Levy in the water and all that. So, he has done stuff where you got to sit there and go, fair play. Even, the way he sold players, he got the most amount of money for the Gareth Bale transfer. He did do stuff like that. But there are those moments where you think, Jack Grealish, not paying up for him, or, Saido Berahino, or, there's so many where what could have been, Paulo Dybala. Again, I'm doing it right now.
But you say Berahino, we got Sonny instead.
Yeah, so maybe I should be praising Daniel Levy a bit more. But for you, Madge, what would you say then?
It's really interesting because I'm 10 years your senior, right? So when you talk about the Alan Sugar days, I do remember it. And when you're talking about what your dad's talking about before that, I think it's Ivan Scholar, wasn't it? Ivan Scholar and Paul Bobroff. That was it, yeah. So, because my dad always talks about Keith Birkinshaw being a great manager for Spurs. And he said there once was a football club over there. That was the famous quote that he had because they started getting involved in football matters. Now, if you want to talk about someone involved in football matters at the club, Daniel Levy is your number one man. And I do remember the days, and this is why I do say, when we talk about the Daniel Levy era where, we would sign a player, to Tottenham who, we'd go for Rebrov rather than Stoichkov. Do you know what I mean? That was the kind of thing that we would do, and it's just what, and it was always a very lackluster attempt of moving forward. And the thing is, like you said, you remember getting into the Champions League as being a turning point. The turning point for me was Martin Jol. And getting us into Europe on a regular basis. We were so close getting the Champions League. But again, you look at the way he handled the Martin Jol situation. He sacked him at half-time. Martin Jol knew he was sacked. And I remember him coming out of White Lane during a European game, in tears. The lovable Martin Jol, I love Tottenham, it's a great club. I love the guy, Shoshin Bali. I used to love that man so much. And, the way that he was treated was disgusting. And, the Spurs fans didn't like that at all. But then again, Juan de Ramos comes in, it was terrible under him. But again, we won a trophy. It's funny, we're terrible and win trophies. Like that's been the thing under Daniel Levy. It's like terrible football, winning trophies. The thing is that what I have to say is what he has left and created is the platform for something massive. You know, if you're looking in that as a business acquisition, a club in London that's in the Champions League, that's a top 6 club in the Premier League, you know, I think the stat was something like 18 out of the last 20 seasons we've been in Europe. Like,
yeah, it's actually unbelievable when you look at that.
I know, and I think sometimes with Spurs fans, we often feel like we're entitled to be in places when in actual fact we're not operating in the same levels as people. Like, and I think that's, and you know, it's the irony about me is I've been called a Daniel Levy criticiser, and I've been told that Daniel Levy buys my season tickets by angry talkSPORT fans. But I just think you just have to use logic in looking at these situations. Where are we now as a football club? In a very good place. And, you know, what I really think is positive about this is he's left us in a good place. So now is the time to go and build on that. And I think if you had to look at what he's done to the football club, have we gone forward? Yes. Have we developed as a football club? Yes. Have we developed as a business? Yes. So therefore, you have to look at his tenure as a success.
Yeah. I feel like it's what I was saying earlier. Like when you stack up us against the other teams in the Big Six and think of the buying power and the pulling power, because it wasn't just like when you think of maybe the other teams that have traditionally built their way up, Man United and Liverpool and Arsenal, maybe they haven't done it how City and Chelsea did, but they're big names, they're big, you know, historic, you know, Premier League and football in England names. So it was, I feel like when we always talk about, you know, even the Pochettino teams and like even the Martin Young teams you were saying there, the One Day Ramos team in that Carling Cup final, we were always underdogs. And that's what I think we're looking at ourselves now thinking, you know, and it's funny when you say like it's been 20 years or whatnot, but like he set us a good foundation. Because now and I mean, this is where we maybe start speculating, because I know I said the last bit of the statement is, you know, Enoch and Joe Lewis are going to stay, but it now sits there. If there's a foreign investor who looks at us now, and maybe Levy wasn't too keen on, you know, there was all those rumours about Amanda Staveley and whatnot, you know, now it looks like, you know, the stadium's there, the training ground's there. There's not much that needs to be done, like in terms of, you know, like Ratcliffe's gone into United and like they're looking at a new stadium now. They're looking at, you know, they've transferred the training ground. None of that needs to happen. The investment goes on the pitch. You know, it's there for all to behold. And do you know what's quite interesting? And I don't know. I've just seen, we've just had an email through from Alex Crook, and he's just said an update on it, saying that we can report that talkSPORT understands Levy's departure was driven by the Lewis family. So considering how close he was with, you know, Joe Lewis, and he's sort of been his right-hand man for years, it looks like there are sort of inklings, because we've seen the changes, haven't we? Saw a lot of the borders change. We've obviously seen Vinay Venkateshan has come in this season. Johan Langer, Paratici's coming back in.
And you know what, Sonny? When you talk about Vinay, that does not feel like a Daniel Levy appointment, because he is so, like, he's such a big figure within football and what he's done at Arsenal, etc. It just feels like Daniel Levy's always operated with the people around him almost as yes men and women. And I feel like he's always had them in place. And that's why sometimes I feel like we've excused some of our recruitment, because those people working with him are like, they're working with Daniel's constraints and they're happy to be in that position. Whereas I don't think the people that have come into the club now are necessarily those kind of people. And I don't know if you watched it, Sonny, the Lange interview about the transfer window, which was so insightful. And so, you know what I've noticed recently that does not feel very Daniel Levy-like is the transparency coming from the club lately.
Yeah,
doesn't feel Levy-like.
The last transparent thing we had from Levy was when he did the Common You Spurs Daniel at the end of, was it one of the other seasons? But you know what? I was just thinking that as you were saying it, because we've had, it was Levy and Vinay Venkateshan did a sit down at the beginning of the season talking about Spurs, and Vinay is quite a good talker, even though like he's come from Arsenal and there's like question marks over like, is he a good appointment? He is a good speaker, whereas Levy, I always find out even on that overlap thing, it was like he's a bit wooden, he doesn't like being public facing, even though he's always at the games and he goes to the away games. And I think another telling thing, and maybe this foreshadowed it, was we're saying about board and, you know, reshuffles. Donna Cullen leaving the board, who was basically Levy's right hand woman. that was quite telling. When she got moved on at the beginning of the season, and then Vinay came in and all that, it was like, right, something's going on here. Because that's what's quite interesting when it comes to our ownership. And, people still wonder, like, what's Joe Lewis's intentions? He still owns about, I think it's 85% of the club, even though I think he lives in Barbados or somewhere. So, I mean, especially with this update, it does make you think that, like, maybe he's sitting there and going, right, we need to turn the screw here. There's so much has changed. We've seen, like, a new manager's coming in, Thomas Frank, a new sort of, like, roles have been invented. Like, there's a role now between the youth team and the first team for development. So it seems like we want to operate. I can imagine there's Joe Lewis and people at Tottenham look at Brentford or Brighton and go, now that is how you run a club. Tony Bloom and Paul Barber, who was at Spurs and is a Spurs fan. That's how you run a football club and make it function and turn profit on players, and then go out and scout better options. So that's the thing. We applaud what Tottenham are doing, but there's clubs smaller than us who are now pulling up trees and doing stuff that is way ahead of them. So I think that's what it is. Tottenham are learning where they are, maybe in this food chain, and trying to adapt. And maybe Levy might be seen as a bit old hat.
Well, in I wouldn't say in fairness, but if you're someone that operates in business and you've got a certain way of doing it, and you feel in yourself your record's proven, like with Spurs, Luka Modric, Berbatovs, Harry Kane, an academy product that ends up getting sold for 80 million. Dele Alli, even though it didn't go right at the end, if we sold him at peak value, he would have went for about 80 mil at the time, 100%, right? So I think Daniel's always gone with that, I might have the next one here. This could be the next one that's going to cost me 15 million now, but might worth 70. And he's got it wrong a few times. As we mentioned, some of these names, like Jack Grealish is the one that sticks out the most, because I believe at the time, I think Villa had got relegated, didn't they? And it was like, we offered 7 million on Josh Onuma when they were just wanting 17 million pounds for Jack Grealish, which is ridiculous, like, when you think of it. And again, he might have got the move.
Kev laughing because he's a Villa fan. I can see him laughing at the corner of our eyes. He's buzzed about that.
Yeah, but, the end of the day, it's just like, again, we often do those kind of deals with people, and it just doesn't feel serious. Whereas even this transfer window, like, bar the Eze situation, Xavi Simons, out of nowhere, bung, we got to get him. Like, this is the first transfer window I can think of in a long time where we've got guaranteed starters coming in.
I wonder if Levy wasn't then involved, if it was Joanne Lang, if it was, Vinay or Paratici and Levy, because it always reminds me when the window where we signed Jed Spence and Fraser Forster and Basuma, there was only one transfer in that window which Levy was involved in, and it was Jed Spence, and that one was so dragged out. We weren't paying up the extra 5 million. Imagine if we missed out on Jed Spence now, who's like now one of our best players. And you're speaking about players there, Madge. The bit that does me is managers. Like, the amount of managers who... There was a stage where we were looking at Pochettino going, this guy's the best manager in the world. We don't want Real Madrid to get him. We don't want United to get him.
No.
And then there was a stage where... And then, like, because we didn't back him, the whole squad deteriorated. And then that was when I think Levy started to lose it. When he went Mourinho, Nuno, Conte. We were like wild goose chasing for a new manager. And then he started just chucking cash at these managers who wanted like 50
it was the
million
desperation. It was the desperation for the trophy. And that to get that hoodoo off our back, because in terms of, the brand Tottenham, forget about the football, it was always casted with this horrible shadow of you don't win trophies, even though we know as Spurs fans the history of the club and the fact that we've won, the 6 most trophies in British football, right? And we haven't been lambasted. We've been lambasted with this idea of being Spursy and not getting things over the line, where like Newcastle get called the entertainers. Like when they have a 12-point lead and they mess it up, they're the entertainers, and we're like, you come third in a 2-horse race. So there was so much almost of like this desperation to win the trophy. I feel like that Europa, that night in Bilbao with Ange, Levy, Son, all these people that are now gone, was the reset moment of Tottenham Hotspur. And now the important thing is, are we in safe hands? Are we going to move forward in the right way? And I look at the team that's been assembled by whoever's up there pulling the strings, and I already like what I see from the transparency of Lange, Vinay's ability to talk, he's a charmer. Like you said, he's like almost like a Surrey Tibbs, a charmer. I'll take you to dinner and I'll give you the best commercial deal out there. Talk to me. And again, the way that he moved Arsenal forward in recent years. I know they haven't won a trophy, but they are competing at the top.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where I called it a springboard moment. A lot of people sometimes see winning a trophy as like the end goal, but to me it was a springboard. And what we had to do was, I think I use that word, what you just used, reset. We had to reset with the manager. We're resetting now with Daniel Levy, and the way that.
But one man remains, Ben Davies.
Maybe he should be the director of football or something. He should be, enshrined in this stadium. It is funny. He must be sitting there when he's seeing these notifications, going, "What am I doing?" I rate it.
Ben's just the nicest man in the world. He's just lovely. He's just there, and he's just so nice that we're just like, "Come on, Ben, through thick and thin, Benny's with us." But you know what? Do you know what? I told my son this evening. I said, Daniel Levy, my son's 8, Leo, has left Tottenham. He wouldn't believe me. He goes, show me. This is an 8-year-old. He's like, there's no way that Levy's stepping down. How goes an 8-year-old goes, I want proof. So I had to show him 2 news articles, and he believed me. And that just shows sort of the energy around Daniel Levy and the fact that we're jumping on Tuesday evening at 9 o'clock doing a podcast and doing an Inside Spurs brought to you by talkSPORT Bet about this situation. Just shows how much he's been involved in the football club in comparison to other boards.
Yeah, I mean, he's ruined my. I thought I was going to have a lovely evening tonight. I was going to run a bath. I'm not feeling 100%. I've got a bit of a cold coming. He ruined my dinner. Like, I was halfway through cooking the dinner. I had to record my videos and short form content and whatnot. And but he's chucked that all up the Swanee, isn't he? So it's what he does. And even I rung my dad because I thought this is the guy. He hates Levy. He's not been a fan of Levy for years. And I was annoyed because I was the third person to ring him. I was beaten by his 2 best mates. I was like, oh, is this what it's come to? But yeah, no. Is it end of an era? Maybe.
Yeah. It's the end of an era, and it's the end of the same old excuse. Now, all the excuses that Spurs have had over the years, maybe it's like, well, we can't compete because we've got a 35,000 stadium in White Hart Lane. That's gone. Our training facilities, that's now sorted. We've got a good squad there. We've got a manager that I think we all believe in. And the only issue was always come back to, if it fails, that's Daniel Levy's fault. It's Daniel Levy's fault. And you know what? I'm going to get absolute pelters in the comments, and it's fine. It's fine. But people could, sometimes I do empathise with him to the fact that he's not on the pitch in the Champions League final, not getting it over the line. He's not on the pitch when we're losing Carabao Cup finals. That's not him. But the argument back would be, well, you should have had better players in there who can do that, and therefore it does all boil down to Daniel Levy. But the fact of the matter is, Spurs have been so close in recent years, and that taste of Europa success, the parade, only justified how big of a football club we are. And, whether you like it or not, other football clubs, because you hate Spurs for some reason, I go on facts and numbers and the sea of people at that parade.
Yeah, I guess the only counter-argument I'd have to what you saying, it's not his fault, is the saying that sometimes the fish does rot at the head, and it sometimes is a trickle-down sort of, there is a trickle-down sort of environment at Spurs. I feel like because it was so it was built off Levy maybe being a bit frugal and not paying up wages, and then players getting content, and then this whole thing of there was so many articles which were all the players who have left Spurs have won a trophy, Kieran Trippier, and all these random players have gone to random leagues and picked up trophies. We got to remember Levy was still involved in a deal where we bought Brian Hill from Sevilla for Eric Lamela, and then we loaned Brian Hill back to Sevilla, and they both won the Europa League. That's balmy to me.
That's Spursy.
I understand there's, he's not on the pitch, he's not he's not in the Champions League final up top trying to bang it in or whatnot, but there are moments where...
Could you imagine it? Could you imagine him up the top? He's bottling it. He's bottling challenges, all sorts. I can't imagine
he's got good feet or what.
I don't know who looks worse playing football, Daniel Levy or Keir Starmer.
Two people you don't want to be in a room with.
Well, bombshells on a Tuesday night, Sonny. I've interrupted your bath, and I do apologise. When Daniel Levy has stepped down from Spurs, your bath goes out the window, and we come here on Inside Spurs, TalkSport's dedicated Spurs show, brought to you by TalkSport Bet, to bring you the latest, because that's what we do here. We are dedicated to our Spurs fans, aren't we, mate?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I thought it was going to be a nice, calm evening, but I've ended up doing a YouTube video, a TikTok, everything. And I thought, I'm going away for the weekend to the South Coast. I'm going to relax more than ever and just have a pint and drink one for Daniel Levy. Thank God.
Do you think there'll be any kind of sort of like, you know, like it was like Goodbye Sonny where we did the songs and stuff like that? Will there be a Daniel Levy, a sort of outro with like "Goodbye, my friend" by the Spice Girls going with like all of his best bits?
Do you not mind if they take the Arsenal song, you know, "Let It All Go"? Every Spurs fan just in the crowd with the banners, just being like, "Oh, I bet." I just want to know like what some of those, you know, there's some really hardcore Levy out people, like, because I'd say me and you are like, we're like. We can admit he's done some good, but there's some fans who are like, they won't even say his name. It's like Voldemort. They'll say like, "He who must not be named." And I can imagine there is some out there who are like absolutely, you know, having
Well, I've heard him tonight. I've heard him on TalkSport this evening, and angry Matt, who does not like me, he's told me that Daniel Levy, apparently buys my season tickets. I was like, what am I going to do now for games? Now Daniel's gone, eh? I'm going to have to buy them like everybody else.
Hello, Vinay.
Brilliant. Listen,
it's Madge.
Yeah. Sonny's been brilliant talking to you, even though I've interrupted your bath. We're going to be speaking to someone that was signed by Daniel Levy on the next episode of Inside Spurs, David Bentley.
I'm looking forward to that. I feel like he's got a lot to say about the insight of playing under Daniel Levy, and you know that night at Manchester City. That's what I want to know about.
Well, yeah, we're going to find out exactly what was said in that dressing room after they threw a bucket of water and ice over Harry Redknapp, and I'm sure it weren't, well, you're a terrific player. You know, he's a terrific lad. I'm sure it weren't that night. So, yeah, Sonny, brilliant stuff. Make sure you look out for the Inside Spurs podcast all over YouTube, and, of course, like, subscribe, comment to the TalkSport YouTube channel. This has been Inside Spurs with me, Majestic, Sonny Snelling from Sonny Talks Spurs, brought to you by TalkSport Bet. Daniel Levy says farewell to Tottenham Hotspur.